you're always okay with where the bullet's going to go. So if you ever have to turn around, you do this. And
point out.
So some people will do this, but the problem is, if it fires and it goes off, it will bounce off the ground and it could hit someone.
Okay.
And so that's why you always raise it up versus lowering it down.
I see.
When you load the gun, always remember that once you cycle it, meaning that once you pull back and release, even if you remove this, the bullet is still here in the chamber. And so one can always be chambered even if there's no magazine there. So if you ever pick one up and you go, oh, okay, what's going on with this one? Typically what you do, turn it over and do this. And if there's a bullet, the bullet will fall out. And that way you can just be sure that, okay, it's and so once you pull back and you hold this, you'll see the hole here, the chamber where the bullet sits. And that way you could look at it and go, okay, it's empty, it's safe now. Okay. And so now it can handle. But even so, you will always keep the end just as if it were loaded. Okay. And so the other thing too is when you're holding the gun, you always have your finger somewhere on the outside. And it's two reasons. One is it makes sure that you don't accidentally, if it's gonna drop and you kind of squeeze your hand, it won't squeeze the trigger. But also, when someone looks at it, they can see that they can see your fingers not on the trigger, so they don't go, oh, are your fingers on the trigger? And you can basically show people that, okay, it's safe. And so you always have your finger straight, unless it's aimed. And then even once you're done aiming, that's when you're going to move your hand to the trigger.
Okay.
And so other than that, any kind of motion that you're doing, you're always holding the gun like this.
All right.
And so typically, once you get the rounds loaded, and I can show you this too, with these longer magazines, you'll see how the bullets kind of stagger on the inside. So what you want to do is once you load some bullets, you take this and you do this to it. And what that does is it makes sure that the bullet is slide all the way back against the back of the magazine. Because what happens is if the bullet is kind of forward a little bit, sometimes it will get stuck while it's going into the chamber. And so what you do is once you load these and give it a couple taps and make sure all the bullets settle to the back. So now that it's loaded, so again, even as I'm getting ready to put this in, I always do this. I always check it and make sure there's nothing in there, because it's not just for bullets that might be in there, but maybe once, maybe from a previous shot, maybe the empty shell is maybe stuck in there somewhere, right? And so you could have like a piece of metal or something in there, and then shove this in there, and then all of a sudden it gets jammed, and then, oh, what's going on? Then what happens is, okay, it's stuck, so I'm gonna eject it, pull back, and then turn it this way, and oh, okay, there's a piece of metal in there, right? And so it's that constant checking that you get used to, and it becomes like a habit that allows you to basically make sure, okay, where the chamber is empty.
Oh, good. Thank you,
fingers off
Jill.
the trigger,
Thank you.
right? And so once you sort of memorize that part of it, it becomes second nature. And then the rest of it is then loading and chambering. And so when you load the magazine, you want to give it a nice push, because there's a latch that grabs onto it. And so sometimes, depending on from one magazine to another, this little indent that catches on the latch might be in a different spot. And so some magazines, you'll feel it click very easily. Some magazines, you'll go in and you go, okay, but it's not fully in. And so you put it in and you kind of give it sort of a nice kick. That way and then you pull down. So whenever you put the magazine, you always pull down to make sure, because what guys have done, they put the magazine in and then they chamber the bullet, and then they do this, and then the magazine falls out. and so
like an
that,
idiot.
yeah, and so that exactly. Then everyone else looks at him and goes, hey. And so you always make sure that the magazine is locked in place, and even if it falls out, it won't actually cause any like a jam or a misfire, but it's just something where it causes a little bit of worry around people around you if you do this and then the thing falls. And so you lock this in, you give it a little push to make sure it's in there. Now what I usually do is when I pull back, so that's the charging handle. So the charging handle basically grabs onto the front of the bolt. So the bolt is the actual item that contains the firing pin, but the bolt also contains the ejector, the part that pulls the empty shell out. And so whenever I chamber, I always flip it over to see that things are working right. And so I could look in here, I can see, okay, it's all actually empty in here. There's no debris or metal or anything. And then when it goes forward, what I want to do, I want to make sure that there's no gap here. And this is what 223 or 22 is. This section right here, they call the breech. This section here is the bolt. What happens sometimes if, let's say, a bullet has a little dent in it, or maybe it's the case is a little ovalized.
He's recording this?
Sometimes that bullet won't go all the way in. And what'll happen is you'll see a gap right here. And so in some cases it won't fire, but in some cases it will fire, but then you'll get a bunch of smoke and stuff shooting out because the bolt isn't fully seated. And so checking this always lets you know that, okay, the bullet is all the way in, it's chambered, and then the bolt is basically pushed all the way forward. Okay. So from here, I could now put it on safe, and so I would still treat this as if as if it could go off, right? Yep. And so, usually when you set the gun down, you always set it down with this ejector port facing upwards, and so it allows someone to see, okay, this is not just sitting here because this is open, because this opens as soon as you charge it. So if I see this open, that probably tells me someone maybe has a bullet in there, or maybe it's been loaded or charged. And so so from the time that you do your firing, let's say that you haven't finished shooting all the bullets. There's some still in the mag, right? So same thing is you check here. So I'm going to flip it over and eject the magazine, so there's still bullets in there. I'm going to look on this side just to make sure there's nothing weird going on, and then flip it down, and then the bullet will fall out. And so from there, I could then hold it open and look, and I could see the hole of the barrel. So that tells me there's nothing in there, and so that would be a condition where I know it's safe. And so again, even as you come up to the gun, even if there's no magazine in place, this is open. As far as I know, this has a bullet in it. This could still be ready to shoot. So again, I'd go in, flip it over, and then look. I could see the empty chamber, and now I could then handle the gun. And so those things are things that once you do it a couple times, you start to remember. Oh, wait, let me check it first. Oh, let me make sure this is tight. That sort of thing. Okay. And so as you're handling the gun, it'll all become second nature. Okay. And so yeah,
it's always loaded. Your mind, it's always loaded. Fingers never on the trigger until you're set down. You got your sight going. Never. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you for doing this, Gil. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
$125.
No. See, his thing is, it's 125 incrementally every 5 minutes. He's like an attorney. He's a gun attorney.
I should have sped him up. Go.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why Ed's the business guy, right?
Well, see,